My family demanded I pay the $40K my sister owes to dangerous people. I blocked them all and hired a lawyer that left them speechless. I'm 30 years old. I work in accounting for a mid-sized company, and I basically just cut contact with my entire family after they demanded I pay off a $40,000 debt my younger sister owes to some pretty shady people. I know, it sounds heavy, and it is, but the truth is this didn't start a month ago when my mom called demanding the money. This started like 25 years ago when I was born, and my parents decided I was the responsible, serious child, and Zoe was the princess who could do no wrong. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why I got to this point, because I swear it's not easy to cut contact with your entire family, but after everything that happened, it was the only option I had left. I grew up in a medium-sized town. Nothing special. My parents worked regular jobs and we had a 3-bedroom house where basically everything revolved around Zoe from the moment she was born. I was like 4 years old when she arrived, and from that moment my life changed. Completely. It's not that my parents were abusive to me or anything dramatic like that, but it was obvious to anyone looking that Zoe was the favorite. She wanted a new toy. She got it. I asked for something. They told me no because money was tight. She got bad grades. Nothing happened. I got a B instead of an A, and they scolded me for not trying hard enough. You know what I mean? It was that kind of constant, exhausting favoritism that makes you feel like you're never enough, like your entire existence is secondary to your sister's. I remember perfectly when I was like 12 and Zoe was 8. She broke my gaming console, literally threw it on the floor because I wouldn't lend her my controller when she wanted to play. My parents told me it was my fault for not sharing, that I should be more understanding with my little sister, and they never replaced the console. I had saved for months, doing jobs for neighbors to buy it, and it just disappeared from my life because Zoe threw a tantrum. That's just one example of hundreds, thousands probably, of situations where I was the one who had to give in, the one who had to be mature, the one who had to understand. Meanwhile, Zoe grew up thinking the world owed her everything, and that there were never consequences for her actions. When I got to high school, I was already planning how to get out of that house as soon as possible. I worked after school, weekends, saved every penny I earned. And my parents thought it was admirable that I was so hardworking, but the truth is I just wanted to get out. At 18, literally the day I turned 18, I moved to a tiny apartment with 2 roommates in the nearest city that had a decent university. My parents got mad, said I was ungrateful. How could I abandon my family like that? But I was already fed up. I paid for college completely by working full-time and studying, graduated with honors, got a good job, and basically built my life from scratch without help from anyone. Zoe, on the other hand, well, she continued being the princess. She went to the university my parents paid for completely, changed majors like 3 times, took 6 years to graduate from something that normally takes 4, and when she finally graduated with a degree in, I don't know, communications or something, she didn't get a job. She lived with my parents until she was 26, not paying rent, not contributing anything, just existing there while my parents kept paying for everything. I visited occasionally, like every 2 or 3 months, mostly to keep up appearances and because my aunt, my mom's sister, always begged me not to cut contact completely. She was the only one in the family who saw how they treated me and who tried to make my parents see it wasn't fair, but they never listened to her. During those years, Zoe had like 5 different jobs. She either quit them all or got fired for being irresponsible. My parents always had excuses, that the boss was mean to her, that the environment was toxic, that they didn't pay her enough. It was never Zoe's fault. Meanwhile, I was climbing the ladder at my job. I bought my own apartment at 25, had savings, investments, basically was doing everything right financially. My parents never congratulated me, never acknowledged my effort, but every time Zoe got a new job, it was like she'd won the Nobel Prize. I swear. Fast forward to like 3 years ago, Zoe finally moved to her own apartment. Well, technically my parents gave her the down payment and were helping with rent. She started dating this guy who, according to her, was an entrepreneur, but who gave me bad vibes from the start. I don't know. There was something about how he talked about money, about investments, about opportunities, that just sounded like a scam. I tried to warn Zoe, even sent her articles about pyramid schemes and common frauds, but she told me I was bitter and couldn't stand to see her happy. My parents obviously took her side, said I was jealous because Zoe had found someone successful and I was still single. The truth is, I was single by choice. I dated people but didn't want anything serious yet. I was focused on my career and my stability, but to them that meant there was something wrong with me. So anyway, this guy convinced Zoe to invest in some business. I don't know what. She didn't have money, obviously, so she borrowed from my parents. They gave her like $15,000, basically all their savings. Then Zoe took out credit cards, got personal loans, even convinced some cousins to lend her money. Within a year, she'd accumulated a massive debt. The boyfriend disappeared with all the money, and Zoe was left with nothing except a pile of debts. My parents tried to help her pay, but obviously they didn't have enough money to cover everything, and that's where they started pressuring me. At first it was hints, like, "Oh, Jacob, your sister is going through a hard time. It would be nice if you could help her with something." I told them no, that Zoe had made terrible decisions and had to face the consequences. They got mad, said I was selfish, that family helps each other. How could I be so cruel to my own sister? The pressure kept increasing for months. Every time I talked to them, it was the same topic. Zoe needs help. Zoe is desperate. You have to do something, Jacob. I stood firm. The truth is, it had cost me a lot to build my financial stability, and I wasn't going to throw it away because of Zoe's mistakes. Like 2 months ago, my mom called me on a Sunday morning. I was chilling in my apartment, making breakfast, and she starts screaming from the moment I answered. Like she didn't even say hello, just started yelling at me that Zoe owed $40,000 to some dangerous people, that they were threatening her, that they were going to hurt her if she didn't pay soon, and that I had to give her the money immediately. I just stood there with the phone in my hand, literally in shock, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her how the hell Zoe had ended up owing $40,000 to dangerous people, and my mom explained that after the scammer boyfriend disappeared, Zoe had tried to recover the money by borrowing from informal lenders, those who charge super high interest and are basically criminals. I told my mom no, that there was no way I was paying that debt, that Zoe had dug her own hole and would have to find a way out. My mom started crying, screaming at me that I was a monster. How could I let them hurt my sister? What kind of person was I? Then my dad grabbed the phone. He normally never got involved in these things, always let my mom handle everything, but this time he was just as furious. He told me I was a disgrace to the family, that I had a moral obligation to help Zoe, that if something happened to her, it would be my fault. I hung up the phone shaking. Not from fear, but from pure rage. Because after years and years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family, now they wanted me to rescue Zoe from the consequences of her own stupid decisions. The next few days were a nightmare. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages from my mom, my dad, Zoe, cousins, uncles, even family friends I didn't even know, were writing me saying I had to help Zoe. It was like my entire family had agreed to harass me until I gave in. The messages ranged from emotional pleas to direct threats. My mom sent me messages at 3 a.m. saying she couldn't sleep, thinking they were going to kill Zoe. Some cousins told me I was greedy and only thought about myself. One of my uncles sent me a super long message about the importance of family and how money didn't matter when it came to saving a loved one. I blocked most of them, but they kept finding ways to contact me. A week after that initial call, I got a notification from my bank saying there had been an unauthorized access attempt to my account. Someone had tried to transfer money using my personal information. I called the bank. Immediately, they put extra security on all my accounts and told me to file a police report. I already suspected who it had been, but wanted confirmation before making accusations. I checked the security logs and sure enough, the attempt had come from the area where Zoe lived. I confronted her by text, because I didn't want to see her in person. And at first, she denied everything. She said I was paranoid. How could I accuse her of something like that? But eventually she admitted that yes, it had been her. She said she was desperate, that the people she owed money to had threatened to kill her, that she'd tried to access my account to take out just enough to make a partial payment. I asked her if my parents knew what she'd done, and there was a long pause before she answered. Finally, she admitted that, yes, they knew, that they had suggested she try it, that I had enough money, and probably wouldn't even notice if a few $1,000s were missing. I couldn't believe it. I literally felt like I was going to have a heart attack. My own family, my own parents, had conspired to rob me. I sent my parents a message telling them I knew what they'd done, that trying to rob me was basically the end of any relationship we had. My mom responded saying I was overreacting, that it wasn't robbery because it was to help my sister, that I didn't need all that money anyway. My dad said that if I really loved my family, I would give them the money voluntarily instead of forcing them to take desperate measures. That twisted logic was so typical of them, I almost laughed, but I was too angry to find the humor. 2 days later, they showed up at my apartment unannounced. It was a Saturday around 9 in the morning. I was in pajamas, drinking coffee, and the doorbell rang. I thought it was a package or something, but when I opened the door, there were both my parents, with angry faces. My mom pushed the door, and they came in without me inviting them, which was already an invasion of my space. But I decided to let them talk because maybe, just maybe, they were going to apologize for all the harassment and the attempted theft. Obviously, I was wrong. They sat in my living room and my mom started with her prepared speech about family, about how I was part of this family whether I liked it or not, about how Zoe needed me and I had the ability to help her. My dad added that they had raised both of us, that they had sacrificed a lot for us, that now it was my turn to sacrifice for Zoe. I told them no, that they had sacrificed for Zoe their whole lives while they'd treated me like I was invisible unless they needed something from me. My mom started crying, saying that wasn't true, that they'd always loved me the same as Zoe, but I couldn't take any more lies. I told them all the things I'd kept in for years, every instance of favoritism, every time they'd ignored me or minimized my achievements, every occasion when they'd put Zoe first, no matter what I needed. I told them I was fed up, that I wasn't giving them a penny, that Zoe would have to solve her own problems like I had solved mine without help from anyone. My dad stood up and told me that if I didn't help Zoe, they were going to take me out of their will, that I wouldn't inherit anything from them. Honestly, I laughed, told them I'd never expected to inherit anything anyway, that I'd built my success alone and they could give all their money to Zoe. I didn't care. My mom called me selfish, cruel, heartless, said I'd become someone she didn't recognize. I told her I was exactly who I'd always been. The difference was that now I had the strength to stand up for myself instead of continuing to accept their unfair treatment. I asked them to leave my apartment, but my dad got more aggressive, started yelling at me, saying I was a disgrace. How dare I talk to my parents like that? I had to threaten to call the police for them to finally leave, but before leaving, my mom told me this wasn't over, that they were going to find a way to make me understand my responsibility. And they kept their threat. A week later, I received a letter from a lawyer. Not a good one, obviously, because my parents didn't have money for that, but it was a formal letter threatening to sue me for moral obligation to support my sister. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd read. Basically, they argued that because I had resources and Zoe was in danger, legally I had to help her. Any competent lawyer would tell you that has no legal basis, but I guess they hoped I'd get scared and give in. Instead, I blocked all my family members on all platforms, changed my phone number, updated my security at work so they couldn't get in, and basically declared myself in a state of absolute no contact. I thought that would be the end, but obviously I was wrong. They started sending me physical letters to my apartment, leaving messages with my neighbors, even tried to contact me through people at my work. They got phone numbers of my friends and called them asking for me. It was full-on harassment, and I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I couldn't concentrate at work, wasn't sleeping well. Every time my apartment doorbell rang, I panicked, thinking it was them again. My aunt, the one who'd always been good to me, sent me a message from a number I didn't have blocked, telling me she understood my position, but please reconsider because Zoe's situation was really dangerous. I told her no, that Zoe needed to go to the police, declare bankruptcy, do whatever was necessary, but I wasn't going to rescue her. The lowest point came like 3 weeks later when my mom showed up at my office. I don't know how she got past security. Probably lied, saying it was a family emergency or something. But suddenly she was there in the lobby of my building, screaming my name, making a huge scene. My coworkers were looking at me like, what the hell? My boss came out of his office to see what was happening, and I just wanted the earth to swallow me. I went down quickly, tried to get her outside before it got worse, but she started screaming louder, saying I was a bad son, that I was letting my sister die. How could I go to work peacefully, knowing Zoe was suffering? I had to call security to remove her kicking and screaming the whole time, and it was humiliating. My coworkers obviously heard everything. Some asked me later if I was okay. Others just looked at me with curiosity and probably thought I was the bad guy in the story. My boss called me to his office afterward and asked if I needed time off to handle family matters. I explained the basic situation, that my family was harassing me to pay my sister's debts, and I'd refused. He was understanding, told me he got difficult family boundaries, but that he couldn't allow that type of disruption to happen in the office again. I agreed. Obviously, it was completely reasonable. That same afternoon I hired a real lawyer, a good one, and told him the whole situation. He told me I had enough evidence to get restraining orders against my parents and Zoe, but first he suggested sending cease and desist letters to all of them, warning that any additional contact would result in legal action. We also documented all the harassment, the theft attempts, the scene at my work, everything. The letters were sent to my parents, to Zoe, and to several other family members who had participated in the harassment. The letter basically said that any attempt to contact me, directly or indirectly, would be considered harassment and pursued legally to the fullest extent. And it worked. Suddenly, everything stopped. The messages ended, the calls stopped, no one showed up at my apartment or work. It was like someone had flipped a switch. For the first few weeks, I felt paranoid, expecting them to show up again. But nothing happened. My lawyer told me they'd probably gotten scared when they realized I was serious, that the legal threat had been enough to put them back off. It's been like 6 months since then, and my life has improved dramatically. It's weird to say it, but cutting contact with my family was the best thing I could have done for my mental health. I don't have that constant pressure, that feeling of guilt I always carried, that expectation that I had to sacrifice myself for people who never sacrificed for me. I got a promotion at work 2 months ago, accounting supervisor with a significant salary increase, and, for the first time in my life, I felt like I could celebrate my success without anyone minimizing it or using it as proof that I should be giving more to others. I started dating someone like 3 months ago, a girl I met at a networking event, and it's the first relationship where I don't feel like I have to hide or constantly explain my family situation. I told her everything from the beginning, expecting her to think I was the bad guy or being too harsh, but she surprised me by telling me it sounded like I had finally freed myself from a toxic situation. Her support has been incredible. She helps me stay firm when I occasionally feel those pangs of guilt that still show up sometimes. My aunt sent me a message like a month ago from a new number just to tell me she understood my decision and supported me. She told me Zoe eventually got a deal with the lenders, that she's paying her debt in ridiculously small installments that will take her years to complete, but at least she's no longer in immediate danger. Apparently she got a real job finally, something in customer service that pays poorly but is stable, and she's living with my parents again. My aunt says my parents are still furious, that they talk about me like I'm a stranger or worse, but that secretly, I think they know they were wrong, even though they'll never admit it. I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now, because there are moments where I wonder if I did the right thing, moments where I think about my parents, getting older and I feel bad for not being there. But then I remember all the times they made me feel invisible, all the times they put Zoe first, no matter what I needed, the fact that they tried to rob me and then harassed me when I refused to be their ATM, and I know I made the right decision. Some people are going to tell you that family is family and you should always forgive and maintain contact, but I believe no one deserves abuse or mistreatment just because they share DNA with you. The truth is, I'm at peace with my decision. My life is mine now, built by my effort, free from the toxicity that surrounded me for 30 years. Zoe is going to have to learn to be responsible once and for all, and my parents are going to have to face the fact that their favoritism and unfair expectations destroyed any chance of having a relationship with me. I don't feel like I owe them anything. I don't feel like I have to fix problems they created themselves. And the truth, after all this time, I, finally, feel free.